Lyutsifer Safin is the main antagonist of the 2021 James Bond film No Time to Die, the final installment of the rebooted James Bond series, whilst being previously mentioned in Spectre. He was a fictional terrorist leader and scientist motivated to take down the criminal organization Spectre for the deaths of his family at the hands of assassin Mr. White. Portrayed by American actor Rami Malek. Lyutsifer Safin was born to a family of chemists who supplied poisons to Spectre, which in turn sought to procure and operate their island manufacturing facility, the Poison Garden. When he was a young boy, Ernst Stavro Blofeld sent Mr. White to poison the entire family with their own dioxin chemicals. He succeeded killing all but Lyutsifer, although he was left facially disfigured, traumatized, and filled with an insatiable thirst for vengeance against the organization and its members. Lyutsifer Safin's most defining trait was his desire for revenge against Spectre for ordering Mr. White to murder his family. However, despite his tragic backstory, it became less of a factor in his motivation. As he saw himself as a ruthless and nasty reflection to James Bond, cruelly mocking the latter, saying that his own skills would live on after death whereas Bond's skills would die along with him. It was this trait that differentiates him from Bond completely. Whereas Bond used the loss of his loved ones to prevent further pain and suffering of innocence in the hands of Spectre, Safin blamed his loss not just on Spectre, but society as a whole, finding the very concept of innocence to be redundant. This was even apparent in the past when he murdered Mr. White's wife in cold blood for the sole crime of having been married once to his family's killer, even though she had nothing to do with his crimes. Even when, after learning that White committed suicide out of remorse after quitting Spectre and that Ernst Stavro Blofeld was arrested afterwards, Safin refused to give up his desire for revenge, as he managed to have Blofeld and all the Spectre members murdered through Oberchev with the usage of the nanobots. By the time Spectre was completely wiped out, Safin's tragic background was no longer holding up, and he was solely interested in killing millions and changing the course of world history, making him just as despicable as Blofeld. Even Bond himself pointed out that Safin's backstory did not justify his plot in killing millions of innocents through the nanobots. However, despite his ruthless nature, Safin was not without some redeeming qualities. Despite having murdered Madeline Swan's mother, he saved Swan from drowning in a frozen lake for genuinely altruistic reasons and spared her that moment. In addition, while holding Bond and Swan's daughter, Mathilde Swan, as his hostage, Safin has a very polite facade towards the young girl, was bitten on the hand by the young child, but he willingly let her go rather than try to hurt or kill her. However, this was a pragmatic decision, as he only wanted Swan and Mathilde's genetic codes to be incorporated into several nanobots that would kill them both in a final act of revenge against Bond, thus losing almost all of the redeeming qualities he once had. But one could also say that he had qualms about not hurting or killing children because he decided not to kill Mathilde and saved a young Madeline from drowning. Furthermore, although this does not excuse his actions, Safin genuinely cared about his dead family, as part of his motivation was to avenge them. However, it should be noted that his plan would not only have killed those connected to Spectre, but also many families, including children who had nothing to do with his tragedy, which calls into question his principles. Being a man of pure mystery and a powerful terrorist mastermind, Safin was one of the most dangerous enemies that Bond ever faced, even much more cunning, intelligent and dangerous than the spy's archenemy, Blofeld. Due to his reputation as a powerful key figure in the world of terrorism, he was also known to be a nearly supervillainesque individual, using his skills and his gifted talents and intelligence to outsmart others into driving away from core beliefs that they used to work or follow after. Safin was also shown to be extremely delusional, as he believed that his actions make him worthy to become a god, creating chaos for the sake of shaping the world in his own image. During his interactions with other people, Safin was usually calm and never gets angry, but this helps give him a sinister and threatening look. He was also resourceful, as he used his own intelligence and skills to outwit his enemies, especially Bond and Blofeld, two strategist men he outwit several times. He was also very evil by nature, as evidenced by his plan to unleash the nanobots to kill millions. Finally, even before being defeated and shot by Bond, Safin took revenge by infecting Bond with the nanobots to permanently remove any chance of a peaceful life with Swan and Mathilde, forcing the spy to sacrifice himself to put a final end to Safin's scheme. With this, he even smiled as Bond points the gun on him and shoots him. In the late 1990s, Safin, wearing a traditional Japanese no mask to cover his scarred face, attempted to murder Mr. White at his home in Norway. Finding only his daughter Madeline and her mother, he killed the latter and was shot and injured by the young girl. However, after temporarily lying motionless, he recuperated and pursued her across a frozen lake into which she fell and began to drown. Instead of killing her, Safin saved and spared her life before leaving. Years later, Safin sought to acquire a highly classified British nanoweapon named Heracles and successfully bought the services of its lead scientist Dr. Valdo Obrachev. However, Spectre also wanted the technology, and the opportunistic Safin took full advantage of their raid on its London laboratory, instructing Obrachev to not resist his captors and secretly reprogram the stolen weapon to exact revenge on his family's killers. Shortly afterwards, at a Cuban meeting of Spectre, they unleashed Heracles in an attempted assassination on former British agent James Bond. However, the DNA-targeting weapon instead singled out the observing board members and massacred them. With Spectre fatally crippled and the weapon firmly in his hands thanks to CIA turncoat Logan Ash, Safin assimilated their assets and manpower, notably reacquiring the Poison Garden and turning his attention to mass production of Heracles. For the first time in many years, Safin approached Madeline Swan, now a psychiatrist attending to the imprisoned leader of Spectre, Ernst Stavro Blofeld. Using her young daughter Mathilde as leverage, Safin blackmailed her into smuggling Heracles into Belmarsh prison by infecting herself. Although Swan would renege on her agreement with Safin, Blofeld was ultimately infected and killed by the unwitting James Bond due to him briefly touching her at one point, unknowingly infecting himself with the nanobots, then passes them on to Blofeld when he loses his temper and tries to strangle him as a result of the latter provoking him by gloating over his responsibility for the incident in Matera, completely destroying Spectre and inadvertently completing Safin's revenge. Pursued by Safin and Logan Ash's strike team, Madeline Swan fled with Mathilde to her childhood home in Norway. Despite James Bond's intervention, both were abducted by Safin and subsequently held captive at the Poison Garden. Shortly afterwards, James Bond and another 00 operative, Nomi, infiltrated the island to rescue them and destroy its Heracles production facilities. Realizing that Bond had rigged the laboratories with explosives, and holding the Swans hostage, Safin invited Bond to an audience and bartered with him, offering to spare Mathilde Swan, Bond's biological daughter, in exchange for sparing his own baby. Like the weapon's original commissioner, Safin sought to use it to prevent terrorism and organizations like Spectre from popping up again. However, he believed the only way to be assured of this was to maintain control of the world through deciding who lives and who dies with Heracles, a result of him being unable to control whether or not his own family died. Negotiations rapidly broke down and Safin threatened to murder the child. Feigning penitence, Bond drew his sidearm and shot Safin's bodyguards, but was too late to stop Safin from descending through a hidden trapdoor with the girl. The villain subsequently let her leave his company after she bit him, clearly spurning his protection. With the first shipment of Heracles on the dock waiting for pickup, Safin made to meet the unidentified buyers. However, while they were still en route, Bond managed to expose the laboratory to an impending naval bombardment by opening the missile silo doors directly above. Whilst Bond was preoccupied elsewhere, Safin reversed the spy's meddling and intercepted him in his father's poisonous botanical garden, shooting and wounding him twice. The pair grappled in an ornamental pond, during which Safin smashed a phial of Heracles against Bond's face and the latter retaliated by snapping his right arm. The phial, insurance, coded to specifically infect and kill Madeline Swan and their daughter, sealed Bond's fate and led him on a suicide mission to reopen the silo doors and completely destroy the facility. But not before shooting the gloating Safin through the head 3 times. Safin is a slim man of average height with short black hair, dark brown eyes and heavily disfigured face, making his age difficult to determine. Safin, in addition, is wearing a long dark blue coat and a black long sweater, and often wears a white snow coat with a golden brown fur in its hood. Noticeably, he also seems to frequent wearing a no mask, a mask typically used in Japanese theater.